Hey guys, it's Jen. Today we're going to be going through my eyeshadow palette collection. So we're going to start with my high-end palettes, and it's probably going to have to be broken up into several videos because my collection is a lot bigger than it was 2 years ago when I first did this video, and that one was an hour and a half long. So I think I'm just going to have to break it up. I think the high-end palettes will probably be in 2 videos, and then I'll probably have to do 2 videos with the more affordable and drugstore ones. So as we go, I'm going to go ahead and declutter some palettes as well. I've never decluttered my eyeshadow palettes before, believe it or not. I've been collecting these for probably 7 or 8 years now, so I've amassed quite a large collection, and the reason for that is not just because I enjoy eyeshadow palettes, they're kind of a weakness of mine, but also just because I feel like as a YouTuber it helps to have a large collection when doing comparisons, and that's something that I love to do. Every time a new palette comes out, I love to show you guys what it might be similar to, and having this really big collection really helps out with that. Unfortunately though, it's gotten so big and so out of hand that it's hard for me to even search through, and usually when a new palette comes out, I kind of dread thinking about going through all of these palettes trying to find a dupe. So I thought I would declutter along the way as I'm showing you guys my collection and just sort of thin things out a little bit and get rid of things that are super old or discontinued, and hopefully that'll make things a little bit easier for me. Also, just storage wise, I need a little bit more room. So just quickly before we jump in, I always get a ton of questions about what am I going to do with the palettes that I declutter, and really there's no one answer to that because it really depends on the palette. If something is really old past the point that I would feel comfortable putting it on my eyes or giving it to somebody else, or if it seems like it's dried out or it's hit pan in a bunch of spots and it's a big mess, I'm probably going to just toss it. But for palettes that have lighter use, I do have 2 sisters, my mom, my mother-in-law, aunts and cousins and friends that I could give these to. So I don't know that I'm going to make any decisions about where these palettes are going to go today, but I'm just going to kind of put them all in a box or a few boxes depending on how many there are, and probably just let my friends and family poke through them first, and then we'll see where we're at. Whenever I get new palettes in that I already own or that I don't want, I always pass them along to you guys in giveaways. If you've been following me for a while, you know that. So that's basically the answer to that question, and I'm not really going to talk about that as I'm going just to save time. So throughout the video I'll say that I'm decluttering something, but I'm not really going to get into like where exactly it's going to go or what I'm going to do with it. So anyway guys, why don't we go ahead and jump right in and get started. Alright guys, so let's start out first with my Anastasia Beverly Hills collection. So first up we have the Modern Renaissance palette, and this one is basically the first Anastasia palette I ever purchased, and this is the original. So I bought this back in 2016 when it first launched. It's kind of hard to believe that it's almost 4 years old already, and I have noticed a decline in the quality of the shadows since then. They've kind of become a little bit more dried out, so I'm thinking I'm probably going to just repurchase a new one of these, and then once I do that I'll declutter this older one. But I do still really love this palette and I want to keep it around. Another one that's one of my all-time favorites from ABH is the Soft Glam palette. This one is just like the perfect neutral palette. I love the mix of warm and cool shades in here, and I think the formula is fantastic. Another one of my all-time favorites is the Master Palette by Mario, and this one I wish they didn't discontinue because it's just such an amazing palette. If you love neutral palettes like I do, this is one of the best, and I've been trying not to use it up because once I use it up it's gone, but I know I should just use it at this point because it's just kind of sitting around and collecting dust. So I'm definitely going to make it a point to pull this out a little more often. Another favorite from ABH is the Norvina palette, and this one is just beautiful. It's like those really soft kind of romantic colors, the pinks and the purples, but also some neutrals mixed in as well. I usually pull this one out more in the springtime, in the summer, so I haven't used it in a while, but still love it. Another favorite for sure is the Sultry palette, although I do have a couple of really nice dupes that you're going to see in my drugstore eyeshadow palette collection video. So this is an awesome palette, but there's actually one dupe that I use a lot more than the original, which is why this one looks kind of untouched right now. Anastasia's shadows can be a little bit powdery and the shimmer shades can be a little crumbly, even though they're very pigmented. So the dupe that I have is just a little bit easier to work with than this one, but I do really like all the cool tones in here. So that's another really good one. And then the Prism Palette, this one is one that I don't really use very much. As you can see, it really doesn't look like it's had that much use. I don't know why I don't reach for this. I guess it's just because I'm not really one to wear bright colors all that often, especially just during the week when I'm just running errands and stuff like that. I usually just reach for neutrals, but there are some really beautiful colors in here. I'm gonna have to try to maybe set this aside and try to use it a little bit more. Next we have the Subculture palette, and this one, I mean, really didn't get much use because shortly after this was released, Bad Habit came out with a dupe version of it, if you remember Bad Habit from Shop Hush. So I used to use that one a lot more than the original just because this one had its issues with the formula. It was very, very powdery, and this is the original one. I don't know if they reformulated. There were rumors that they did. I'm not 100% sure if they ever actually came out and said that they reformulated. But I just found this one to be really, really powdery, so I didn't use it all that much. Then we have the Jackie Aina palette. This one just launched this fall, and while I like the colors in here, I do find that this runs a little bit too deep for my skin tone. This is really the only color I can use as a transition, and then the rest are quite a bit darker, so I don't find myself reaching for it that much, but I am going to keep it around just for comparison purposes. And the Norvina palette, this one, I've mentioned this as a regret in several of my other videos just because, I don't know, first of all, I'm not crazy about the bright colors. It's not really my vibe. Also, the formula of this one is a little bit tough to work with just because of how pigmented it is. Like if you're somebody who's not super skilled with eyeshadow, like that's the way that I am, and I just like something that's a little bit more easy to blend. And I just felt like especially these matte shades were a little bit tough for me to work with. So I don't really reach for this one, but again, I'm just keeping it around for comparison purposes. Then we have the Riviera palette, and this one came out last spring. I did really enjoy using it back then, but haven't reached for it much since. So I'm thinking I'll probably pull this one out again in the spring, just because these colors are kind of spring-like, and I'm not really in the mood to wear this one at the moment, but I think I definitely will again at some point. And then last but not least, we have a custom palette that I made just with some of her singles on Black Friday. I want to say it was like maybe 3 years ago. I just picked up a couple of neutral shades and then this palette also, which was on a major sale. I want to say they were like 50% off at the time. So it was really just like about me wanting to try out some of their singles, but I really don't use this all that much. All right, so next up we have my Lorac collection, and you're going to see some really old palettes in here. The first one is the Pro Metal palette. This is just a little mini version. It's all shimmer shades for the most part, some of them a little bit more metallic than others. You have a few metallics here. And then these on the end and this quartz shade right here are a little bit like more of a satiny kind of a finish. So, I mean, it's not really one that I reach for all that much because it doesn't have any mattes in it. So I'll probably just declutter this one because it's just, I haven't reached for it in many years now. And then another mini palette is the Pro Matte, and this one I actually do use every once in a while because, again, it's a neutral palette, and sometimes I'm just in the mood for an all matte look, and Lorac's formula is fantastic. I just can't stress that enough. It's one of my favorite formulas of all time, just because unlike the Norvina palette that I just mentioned, this formula is ultra blendable. So if you have trouble blending eyeshadows, try Lorac's because they almost like blend themselves. They're so seamless. So this is another really, really cute one. And I believe this is actually still available too. Oh, and then these 3 travel palettes. These actually, I think you might still be able to get them at Kohl's. They were there pretty recently, last time I was in store. So even though these came out a long time ago, they've been gone from the Ulta website forever, but Kohl's, for some reason, just randomly picked them up. So these kind of had cheek products as well as eyeshadows. So this one was the Venice Beach one. Really, really pretty. It comes with a golden highlight and then more of a pink highlight, or it could be like a shimmery bronzer, and then the 4 eyeshadows. But what I loved about these is that you can use the face colors as eyeshadows too, especially in the case of like the Malibu one. This bronzer right here, it's a matte bronzer, but you could totally use this as a transition shade, or you could use this Morning Surf one too, which is just beautiful. I loved the color stories in here. I definitely want to pull these out and use them a little bit more because they're really good palettes, and I just love like how cute they are and how small. And then here's the Santa Monica one. This one was beautiful too. This shade Twilight Tide was gorgeous. It's such a beautiful blue because if you're kind of somebody who's afraid of blue eyeshadow, this one isn't too intimidating. Plus, this Sunset Yoga is a beautiful blush color. And this Bungalow shade, it's kind of like a dusty mauve. It's just so pretty. So anyway, next we have the Pirates of the Caribbean palette. Remember this one? This one is so old. I'm probably going to go ahead and declutter this because I never use this anymore, and it's not something that's still around, so I'm not ever going to be, you know, mentioning it to you guys. But it did have this little door in here with a face palette, which I'm guessing is over with my face palette, so we'll come across that if I ever do a face palette collection video. But I don't know. But anyway, I mean, the formula was good, but it's just so old at this point, I got to get rid of it. Next, we have these Unzipped palettes. We have the Ocean Sunset and the Desert Sunset. These actually were not my favorite formula, believe it or not. Even though they're unzipped palettes, I love the original and the Unzipped Gold, which you're going to see in a few minutes. But this one, for some reason, there was just something off about it. I didn't feel like it was up to the same quality for some reason. I did really like the colors. They're nice, beautiful, warm tones and stuff, but I don't reach for this one that much, so it's going to go in the declutter pile. And the same thing with the Ocean Sunset. This one also, actually, this one was even worse than that one. I feel like the formula of this was just not good. They just didn't pick up at all. They were really, really sheer. I mean, you can kind of see like how it's sheer and powdery. So I'm going to put this one in the declutter pile as well. And then next we have the Pro to Go. I don't believe this one is available anymore, which is kind of sad because it was a really great idea for a palette. Inside you had a shimmery highlighter and then also a matte highlighter. You could also use them as eyeshadows. You had 4 really neutral eyeshadows. You had a nice transition color, a black, a deeper outer corner shade, and then a lid shade. And then on the other side, you had face products. So you had a coral blush, a pink blush, and then a bronzer that was matte as well. And it came with little brushes. So I just thought this was such a cute travel palette, and it's the Pro formula, which I think is their best. So I'm kind of disappointed that this one's been really hard to find. I'm not 100% sure if it's discontinued, but I haven't seen it anywhere for a few years now. Still, I'm going to keep it because I do really enjoy this one. And then next up we have the California Dreamin Palette. This one has also been discontinued, but I'm going to keep it because I love this one so much. This was one of my favorite color stories from Lorac, just because it's like those really soft, kind of muted colors. I loved this dusty purple, this green, this beautiful dusty peach shade, the dusty rose. I mean, it was all just like those really subtle dusty colors that just work out really perfectly with my skin tone. The shade Kitty Cat was a beautiful lid shade as well. So I'm very sad this one's discontinued also. I feel like I would use it in videos more if I knew that you guys could buy it too, but because it's not out there anymore, I just don't really talk about this one, sadly. Then, of course, another classic is the Lorac Unzipped palette. This is one of my all-time favorites from the brand, just because, again, it has those dusty, rosy neutrals in here, and the formula is really good. I've had this for so many years. Actually, back in December, Kohl's was having like a 50% off Lorac day, and I was planning on buying a new one of these because mine is so super old. I want to say it's like 4 years old maybe. This is actually the second one of these that I've purchased. I got the original way back when it first came out, at least like 4 or 5 years ago, and I hit pan on a couple of the shades. So this is my newer one now, which has already gotten some use, but I just love this one so much. Then we have the Pro palettes. These are probably Lorac's best formula. Like I was mentioning with the little mini one, they almost like blend themselves, and I love how they're laid out too, because you always have a complete row of shimmer shades on the bottom and then matte shades on the top, and they're just like so silky and so creamy. They're amazing. This one is more of like kind of a mix of both warm and cool shades. This is the original Pro 1 palette. And then we have the Pro 2, which is more on the cool tone side. Again, you have your row of mattes and then your row of shimmers down here. You have some blues in this one, the purple, the green. So it's definitely more of that cool toned vibe. Number 3, this one, it actually took me a while to warm up to it. When I first got it, I wasn't crazy about it because at the time that this came out, it was kind of like that modern Renaissance time period where all the palettes that were coming out were like super warm with like all the orange and red shades. And that's kind of what everybody was into. And this one came out and it just looked boring. Everybody kept saying it was so boring. But in the past like 2 years or so, I've been using this one more than any of the other Pro palettes in the line just because it's like the perfect neutral palette. You do have kind of some warmer shades right here, but you also have some beautiful cool tones in it as well. So this one is probably at the moment my favorite of all the Pro palettes. And then this is the Pro 4, which is the last one they came out with. And this one is more of a rosy tone palette, but again, you have a very nice mix of cool tones like down on this side, and then you also have some warmer tones over here. So this is another really pretty one and probably my second favorite. Next up, we have the Unzipped Gold. This one leans a little bit more warm to neutral than the regular Unzipped, which is more of those rosy tones. So this one, you know, I think I like that one a little bit better than this one, but this is still a nice palette. I love the shimmers in this one. The only criticism I have though is that these two shades look so incredibly similar, and actually these do too. This one has a little bit of like shimmer to it. It's more of a satin, while this one is matte, but they're like almost the same color if you're looking at them in the pan, and on the eyes they look very similar. So I kind of wish these were a little bit more varied. I especially wish that they put more of like a lighter transition color instead of one of these. So really the lack of a transition shade for fair skin is the reason why I don't really use this one all that much, but I'm still going to keep it because I like the shimmer shades in it. And then, oh boy, these three Unzipped palettes, these came out pretty recently, but unfortunately they were not my favorite formula at all. I actually think I'm going to get rid of these. I know like mini palettes are in right now, but these, I mean, you can kind of see this one already got hard pan, like it doesn't even pick up. And this one kind of did the same thing. It just wasn't Lorac's normal quality. So that one was unfiltered. Then there was Brazen, which was more warm tones. This one I think had the best formula out of the three, just because I think warm tones are usually easier to formulate. And then this one also had some really beautiful cool tones as well, but again, I hardly used it. Once I swatched it and I felt like the shades were really hard to pick up, I used it on my eyes I think like once, but it just really wasn't up to Lorac's normal standards. Next up, we have the Shine Bright Pro Eyeshadow Palette. I think this was a holiday release from last year. As you can see, I hardly even touched it. There are a couple shades that got some use, but some of them are just completely untouched. But this isn't something that you can buy anymore, so I'm not going to keep it around because I can't really talk about it on my channel. Plus, I don't like love it. If I loved it, I would keep it just for myself, but I think I'm going to put this in the declutter pile. And since it's so new, I may even just sell this one because it's hardly been used at all. Next, we have the Mega Pro 3. This one is still around, and it is that nice pro formula, but it's just bigger. So you have 2 rows of mattes and then 2 rows of shimmers. And again, I will definitely keep this one because I love the pro formula. It's just a little bit more overwhelming because it's such a big palette, but it does have a really nice, again, mix of warm and cool shades in here. So there's pretty much like something for everybody. And then the last palette is the Beauty and the Beast one. I remember when Lorac was doing all these movie palettes. This one I liked better than the Pirates one. Just the color story I thought was really beautiful. And I mean, the packaging was so nice as well. It has the book, it has the mirror here. This was a really, really nice palette. But again, it's not available anymore. So it doesn't really make sense for me to keep it because I can't talk about it here on my channel, which is kind of sad. But I don't know. I may declutter this or I may keep it because I really do like it. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to think about this one. I'm not sure where it's going to go yet. And as I was putting those away, I just found 2 more that were hiding at the bottom of the basket. These are really old. This one was called the Getaway Eye and Cheek Palette. I believe this was a Nordstrom exclusive, and it came out in the springtime. It was supposed to be just a travel palette. You had a matte bronzer, 2 blushes, one that was more shimmery and one that was matte. You also had a highlighter and then 6 eyeshadows. I actually used this one quite a bit. I did take it on vacations with me that summer, but it's really, really old. So I'm going to go ahead and declutter this one. And then we also have the Refined Romance Eye and Cheek Palette. I hardly even remember this one, but it has 6 eyeshadows and then again 3 face products, a matte blush, and then this shimmery, I guess it's kind of like a pink highlighter or maybe like a blush topper, and then more of a white highlighter. So this one, again, I don't even know how old this is, so I'm probably going to declutter this one too. Alright guys, next up is my Too Faced collection. So first up is the Funfetti palette. I don't know if you guys remember this. I believe it was an HSN exclusive, but it came with a really, really cute blush, which I still have, and that's actually my favorite out of the collection. I just felt like the palette was okay. It definitely was not their best formula, which usually happens with these cardboard packaging. I usually like the tin ones a lot more. So this one I really only used like once or twice and haven't touched it since. So it's actually pretty new. Like I'm looking at some shades here that were not ever even touched or swatched or anything. But I'm going to go ahead and put this in the declutter pile just because I'm not crazy about the formula at all. Next, another really old one that I'm going to declutter is the Christmas in New York. I believe this was from the holiday 2017 collection. And this one, it just, again, the formula was not good. I just never really liked their holiday collections, except for the one this year, which I'm going to show you in a second. I actually feel like they did a good job on the formula with that one. But this one, similar to the Funfetti, they're just like a little difficult to pick up, not super pigmented, a little bit more on the powdery side. So I'm going to get rid of this one too. Next, we have some cute little mini palettes. We have the Hot Buttered Rum from this year. This was from the fall collection, and this one is so pretty. It's really warm toned, kind of just has that really toasty vibe. I really, really like this palette a lot. I also have these two from last year. I think in the fall time they came out as well. We have Tickled Peach and Sugar Cookie. So these I actually took on a few different vacations with me. When I first got them, we went to Lake Placid, I remember, upstate New York for the fall time, and I took these and they were perfect travel palettes. So this was the sugar cookie one, and it really actually smells like sugar cookies. It smells really good. And then here's the Tickled Peach. This one had a peachy scent to it and just kind of some like peachier tones in there. So I'm definitely going to keep all three of these. I really like them a lot. And then speaking of fall palettes, I also have both gingerbread. We have the gingerbread spice original and then the extra spicy. So the original is, you know, one of my favorite palettes from Too Faced. I love the color selection in here. I think it's beautiful. It has a nice mix of warm and cool tones. It also has a fantastic formula. It's so good. The shimmer shades are so rich and buttery. The matte shades are very easy to blend. There is some fallout to it, but I just love like all the looks that I created with this palette. And also the extra spicy, this was one that really surprised me. I didn't necessarily want to buy it when I first saw pictures of it online, but when I saw it in store in person, I fell in love with it. I did a whole video on this with several different looks. And it's become one of my favorite warm tone palettes in my entire collection. Again, the formula is fantastic, and I just feel like all of these shades go together so well. Next up, we have Natural Love and Natural Lust. So the Natural Love palette is several years old now, and this one was just kind of more of a pastel kind of vibe. And again, the formula wasn't my favorite when it came to this palette and the Natural Lust. I just think for some reason their cardboard formula is not the same as the one in the tin packaging, so I didn't use this one all that often. I felt like it was a really pretty springtime palette, but I just tended to reach for other palettes because the formula of this one wasn't the best. So I think as far as me using it, I would definitely go ahead and just declutter this, but because I have a YouTube channel, I almost feel like I need to hang on to it just in case there are other palettes that come out that are similar that I might want to compare with, so I might just hang on to it just for that. And then the same thing with Natural Lust. I felt like the colors in here are really beautiful. It's a little bit deeper and richer than the original, so I think I actually like the color story of this one a little better because you have some really light colors, but you also have some deeper ones to work with too. There's just more variety in here. But again, the formula is just not really my favorite. Still, I just got this recently, so I don't want to get rid of it yet. Next, we have Natural Eyes and Natural Matte. I never owned the original versions of these, so these are the revamped ones. And I really like these actually. I kind of forgot I had them, so I definitely want to pull these out and start using them again. So this one, the Natural Eyes palette, has a mix of matte and shimmer shades in it, and I think the formula is really, really good on these. They're very silky and easy to blend. And then here's a look at the Natural Matte. So this one is just all matte shades again, which I don't reach for super often, but every once in a while, if I just want an all matte look without a shimmer shade on the lid, I sometimes reach for this one. I also sometimes use these together, so I'll pull some matte shades out of here and then use them with the shimmers in that one. So I really like this one too. Next, we also have the Just Peachy Mattes and the White Peach. So Just Peachy Mattes is also another all matte palette. I do think the formula is really good on this one too. This one got a ton of use when it first came out, and I really, again, it's kind of just been in the back of the basket and I haven't reached for it that much. So seeing it again definitely makes me want to pull it out and play with it. I'll probably use it a little bit more in the springtime. And the White Peach palette, it's funny because so many people did not like this one, but this is actually one of my favorite Too Faced palettes because I just think the color story of this goes so beautifully with my skin tone. These colors just work so well. The transition shades are so pretty. The lid shades are beautiful. I'm so sad that this Peach Ice shade just broke. And I actually saw this palette in TJ Maxx recently, and it was like half price, and I was thinking about buying a backup, and then I didn't. And the next day I took it out to use it, and this one shattered. I went back and they weren't there anymore. So I'm hoping that I can find it again at TJ Maxx because I really do want another one. I use this one pretty frequently. Next, we have the Too Faced Chocolate Bonbons palette. I got this one, I want to say 2 summers ago. It was 50% off at Ulta, and I never got it when it first came out, so I figured I should just add it to my collection, especially because it has a lot of really nice cool tones. And I really do think this palette's pretty, and I haven't owned it for that long, so I'll probably keep this one around. It's funny because I don't actually own the original Too Faced chocolate bar. I don't know what kind of, beauty YouTuber I am that I don't have that, but for some reason I just never bought it. And then next we have the Sweet Peach palette. So I actually missed out on this one the first time. This was kind of around the time when this first launched. It was one of those ones that it sold out so quickly, like the first day, and so many people missed out on it. And then it took them forever to do a restock. I believe it came out in the spring, the first one, and then they didn't release it again until the fall time. So we had to wait like almost 6 months. And that's when I bought it, when it came out in the fall. And by that point, the hype had kind of died down a little bit on it. But before this palette launched, I never really thought about something selling out like on the first day. It didn't used to happen. But when this launched, it was, I think, at the height of the makeup craze, and everybody just went insane for it. And I don't know what I was doing that day, but I remember I wasn't home and I just figured, oh, I'll buy it later tonight. And then when I went to go buy it, it was already sold out. So it's kind of funny because that really doesn't seem to happen that much anymore. Either the brands, make sure they have enough stock that it doesn't sell out, or people just aren't buying as much makeup, so launches aren't, quite as big as they used to be. So next up we have the Chocolate Gold palette. This is another one of my favorite Too Faced palettes, and it was one that I didn't initially think I was gonna love, but once I tried it in store and swatched it, I was like, this needs to come home with me. I think initially I was just a little afraid of the color that's in here, but if you cover up the green and the hot pink, it actually is a very, very neutral palette overall. So what I loved about it is that they give you these transition colors here that are mattes, and then you have a matte black and a matte ivory. So you can really create a base look on your eye, and then you can just go ahead and pop one of these shimmers on the lid and you're done. So it's one of those palettes that if I kind of don't know what kind of look I want to do, or I don't feel like being super creative, I'll just do a really basic neutral look with these shadows, and then just depending on what I'm wearing, pop one of these on my lid and I'm done. And I think the formula of this one, like the gingerbread palettes, is fantastic. So this is definitely a favorite of mine. Next up we have the Pretty Rich palette, and this one is definitely not a favorite of mine. As you can see, it hardly got any use. I think I'm actually going to declutter this one because from the shades that I did use, I wore it on my eyes once, and I wasn't crazy about the formula as much as the other Too Faced palettes. Plus, I'm not crazy about the fact that it has 4 pressed glitters in it. This is one of those palettes where I just feel like I don't know why I bought it. The color story isn't super unique either, so I think I'm just going to put this one aside. Also, we have the I Want Kandee palette. So this was a collab with Kandee Johnson, and this one, I felt like the formula was just okay. Again, it kind of has this cardboard layer on top, similar to the shadows that are in the cardboard palettes. So I feel like the formula was kind of on par with those. It was not my favorite, and I hardly ever use this one. I don't think it's even available anymore, so I'll probably just get rid of this. And then last but not least, we have the palette from this year's holiday collection, and this one I actually really like. I think they did a good job with the formula. I wouldn't say it's as good as the chocolate gold or the gingerbread ones, but it's better than the other ones that they've had in the past for holiday, or the Natural Love palette. I actually think the formula on it is pretty decent. It picks up really well, and the mattes feel really soft, and they're very pigmented. So I was surprised. I wasn't planning to buy this, but I just swatched it in store for the heck of it and was pretty impressed with the formula, and I just think the color story is really pretty too. So I'm going to hang on to this one as well. All right, so let's move on to Tarte, and I have so many Tarte palettes. I might have more than any other brand because for a while there I was just buying every single palette that they released, mainly because Tarte is definitely my aesthetic, my vibe. I love a neutral palette, and most of theirs are very neutral, but I haven't really purchased much from them the past year or two just because stuff started to look very similar to other things, so I just kind of pulled back a little bit. But I definitely have some favorites that I still use regularly. The first ones being the Tartelette series. Now these two right here, the original Tartelette and the Tartelette in Bloom, are probably my favorite of the Tarte palettes, and these are actually brand new. I just purchased new ones because mine were so worn and so old, and I had hit pan on so many different shades. So this one is the original. The formula is fantastic. I really enjoy this one a lot. This one's an all matte palette. It definitely leans more cool, but there are a few warm shades in it. And then the Tartelette 2, or Tartelette in Bloom, is not only my favorite Tarte palette, but one of my favorites in my entire collection. This is really just the perfect neutral palette. You have kind of just a really nice mix of any shade that you would need in here as far as neutrals go. And I love the way they set it up because you have a row of cool tones right here, then you have a row of really neutral shades, and then a row of warmer, kind of almost rosy tones. So you have a really nice mix of tones in here, and you can just kind of go straight across a row and create looks, or obviously skip around the palette. But this is definitely one of my most reached for palettes across my entire collection, and I don't see that stopping anytime soon. So absolutely love this one. And then the Tartelette Toasted is definitely my least favorite as far as the Tartelette palettes go. It is a really beautiful warm tone palette, and again, I think the formula is really nice. It's just that I don't wear like these really warm tones that often. I usually reach for them in the fall time, and that's about it. And honestly, I shouldn't just be like, this is a fall palette and stick with that, because these tones actually make blue eyes really pop. So I want to give this palette some more love, definitely, and start using it a little bit more again. Next up, we have the Clay Play and the Clay Play 2. It's really hard to tell which one is which because the packaging looks exactly the same, but on the back it has a little label. So the first one is the Clay Play. This one is the original, and it's an all matte palette again. So you have 9 different eyeshadows plus 3 different bronzer shades or contour. This one's a little bit more cool toned. Then you have a neutral, and then you have this deeper one right here, which I didn't really use on my face, but I did sometimes use it as a deeper eyeshadow. The formula on this one is also amazing. It's very similar to the Tartelette palette, so I enjoyed the formula a lot. But one thing that I wished is that they had included some shimmer shades, because I don't always want an all matte palette all the time, and I already had the original Tartelette for that. So then they came out with the Clay Play 2, and I thought it was going to be a completely different palette, but actually they kept a lot of the exact same shades in here and just swapped out these 3 for shimmer shades. So all of these mattes are the same ones that are in the original. Plus, they kept the same terracotta bronzer that was in the original one, but they swapped out the cool toned bronzer for a blush and then the deeper bronzer for a highlighter. So while I do love the changes that they made, I was a little bit annoyed that they didn't just change all the shades and make it a completely new palette, because I already owned the original, and then I felt like I was getting so many of the same exact shades in here with just a few additions, and I was regretting even buying the original to begin with, because I feel like this is definitely like a complete face palette. But while I personally like the changes because I have fair skin, I feel like they took away some of the shades for deeper skin tones. They took away the deeper bronzer, they took away some of the deeper eyeshadow colors, and they just made this palette very light overall, so that was kind of a bummer as well. And then next we have the Aspen Ovard collab, and this one I was a little bit annoyed again when I got it, because once I swatched it next to the Clay Play 2, and I actually did a video on that, it was so similar that I felt like I didn't really need to buy this one since I had the Clay Play. The blush and highlighter were very close, and then some of the shadows in here were just too similar. So I kind of regretted buying this even though the formula was really nice. I just felt like I already had similar shades in the Clay Play. And then another palette that I have 2 of because they only slightly changed it was the Maneater. So the first one that came out looked like this, and it had this long shade right here and then 7 additional colors. And I loved this palette. I thought it was great. It had warm tones, but they weren't like super overly warm, and I really enjoyed the formula as well. And then they said they were coming out with a new Maneater palette, and the promo photos online made it look a lot different than this one. So I purchased it. I just thought it was like a volume 2. But then when I got it home, I realized that the shades were identical. They have the same names, they were the same. The only difference was that they took out that really long shade, made it shorter, and put in a black, and that was it. So I basically bought the exact same palette with an extra black, which I hardly ever use black shadows anyway. So basically I didn't even need to buy this one, and I was really annoyed that they didn't make it clearer that it was the same palette just with a black shade. So that's why this one hasn't even been touched yet, because it's literally the same thing. So I've just been using this one, and I'm keeping this one for when, you know, this one's too old and I'll toss it, and then I'll use this one. And then next we have the Tarteist Pro and the Tarteist Pro Remix. These are honestly not my favorite palettes from Tarte. The formula doesn't feel quite as good as the Tartelette ones, and I don't know, for some reason I feel like the colors in this one aren't like super cohesive. Like I don't look at this palette and think of different looks I can create with it. It's an all matte palette with the exception of just these 4 shades over here. So I don't know, I think I'm probably going to go ahead and declutter this one just because I really don't use it. And then the Tarteist Pro Remix, I actually like this one a lot better just because it had a mix of matte and shimmer shades in it. But I did feel like they improved upon the formula of this one a little bit. So I do like this one more than that one as far as formula goes. It's actually very similar to the Too Faced Chocolate Gold palette in that you have all of these shimmer shades and then you have a matte ivory, a matte transition, a matte black. It's just missing that matte deeper brown that the Chocolate Gold has. And then all the rest are shimmers for the lid. So if I had to pick one or the other, I would pick the Too Faced Chocolate Gold just because I like the shimmer shades in that one better, just color wise, and also I like the formula of that one better. So I really don't feel like I need two palettes like that, which is why I'm going to go ahead and declutter this one as well. Then next up we have the Make Waves and Be a Mermaid palette, and this one, it was a summer release. It's super, super cute. I love the packaging, but again, it was just kind of like all the palettes that were coming out at that time, which were, you know, kind of warm neutrals with a few pops of blue in here. So I have so many palettes that look just like this, and I wasn't crazy about the shape of the pans just because it made it hard to get my finger in there. Usually I use the shimmer shades with my finger, and then, you know, if you're using a brush, it's a different story because you can fit a brush in here no problem, but it's just a little awkward to use with your fingers, which is why I really didn't use this one all that much. The formula is very good on it, but I just feel like I have very similar palettes to this a bunch of times over. So I don't know, I'm probably going to get rid of this one as well. And then next I have a whole bunch of their round palettes, like from the Rainforest of the Sea collection. So this is the first one, and I actually went ahead and repurchased this one after the original one just because it started to dry out. This is a slightly different formula than a lot of their other palettes. It's almost like a cream to powder, so it's kind of a unique formula, and it's not my favorite from Tarte. Again, it's okay, but you do have to kind of use these with your fingers. I think that's the way that it works best. So usually I reach for these more in the summertime when I'm just looking for like really quick and easy, simple looks without a brush, like to just kind of swipe something on my lid and go. But I really like the color stories of them. This one, like I said, was the original, and it's just more of like a neutral palette. And then volume 2 was a little bit more cool toned actually. The browns were really cool toned. Then you have this taupey gray and a navy blue, which I really liked a lot. This one I actually got in a boxy charm, and I haven't used it yet. I had another volume 2 that I purchased, but that one got a little bit dried out, so I tossed it, and I really haven't gone back in and used that one yet. So that's pretty much new. And then next we have volume 3, and this one was my least favorite just because the entire thing was shimmer shades, which made it really difficult to use. I mean, it's one thing, I guess, if you're just going to pop a shimmer shade on your lid and be done with it, but it only had this matte ivory right there, and that was it as far as mattes go. So I really did not use this that often just because I felt like it was hard to make a complete look with it. And then this one is the Rainforest of the Sea Sizzle, or I guess volume 4. And this one, actually, in the promo photos, it looked very, very different. It looked really rosy toned, and while it does have a couple of rosy shades in it, the overall color story isn't really what it looked like. So I do like it, I just don't love it as much as I thought I was going to. And then what is this one? This is the Love, Trust, and Fairy Dust palette. So this one's not one of the Rainforest of the Sea. This one's just their regular powder eyeshadow formula. And this one was just okay again. I did like some of these cooler shades over here. I think this was probably like a spring release or something, but I can honestly say I haven't reached for this one in forever. I used it a few times when it came out, but I would definitely be interested in trying it out again and just seeing if I like it any better now, because I just remember it, like, you know, not being wowed by it, I guess. And then this one is the BU Naturally palette, and this one, I can't remember if this came in a boxy charm as well. They basically reused some packaging from an old Rainforest of the Sea palette and put this sticker on top and just kind of filled it with a couple of different shades. But it kind of looks so similar to all the other ones. They may have even reused some of the shades from some of the other palettes and just kind of put them in a different mix or something. So I don't know. I don't even know why I have this one. I'm probably going to just declutter it because I feel like it looks so similar to all the rest of them. Next up, I have some of their mini palettes. I actually really enjoy these a lot too. We have the Tartelette Tease, which I think was the first one that came out. This one's more of a cool tone palette. It's very similar color story-wise to the first Tartelette palette, except this one has a couple of shimmer shades in it too, so it's just a really cute travel palette. And then the Tartelette Flirt was more of a warm tone palette, kind of similar to Tartelette Toasted, I would say, but again, really pretty. And then the Tarteist Pro To Go, I actually really enjoyed this one. Even though I wasn't crazy about the large Tarteist palettes, I felt like the formula on this one was really, really good, similar to the Tartelettes. And for a really small mini palette, they gave you a nice variety in here. You had a cool tone transition as well as a warm tone. You had a couple different lid options. You had this kind of blending shade up here. So I thought this one was really nice, actually. Next up we have the Sex Kitten palette, and this one, oh my gosh, I totally forgot I had this. I haven't even used it at all, and I love the cool tones in here. I don't know if they make this one anymore, but I'm gonna keep this because these are definitely shades that I would use, and I think at the time maybe I wasn't like using a lot of cool tones and a lot of people were not into them, so I'd never use this on my channel, but I'm into cool tones, I always have been, so I think I'm definitely gonna keep this one out and start using it. All right, and then the rest of these I'm just going to go through pretty quickly because just on site I can tell I'm already going to declutter most of them. So the first one is the Ladies Night palette. I think this one was part of a QVC set. It's not good quality, and I found that a lot of the sets on QVC and their holiday sets were just not the same standard as their regular ones. So I'm definitely going to go ahead and declutter this one. I used it like once or twice, but I just felt like the formula was really bad. And then this one was the Energy Noir palette. This one too, the formula was so bad. I don't know if they just had issues like formulating the cool tones, but it's so dry feeling and dusty, and these shadows did not blend at all. Even though I really love the cool tone blush and I like the vibe of it, it just didn't work out formula-wise. Then we have the Goddess Glam Eye and Cheek palette. Again, formula was pretty terrible. You can see how it has hard pan on most of these shades right here. It was just really hard to work with, so definitely decluttering that one. This one was the Make Magic Happen palette, and this was a new formula that they were trying out where, again, it's more of like a cream to powder, and I just wasn't a fan of it. It was okay, but not really my cup of tea, so I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of this one as well. I never reached for it. And same thing with this Buried Treasure palette. It was again like that cream to powder formula, but for some reason I like the Rainforest of the Sea ones better than this one and the Make Magic Happen. I just felt like these were a little bit hard to work with. I mean, they picked up okay, but I don't know if it was just like how they blended on the eyes. There was just something about it that I just didn't really enjoy using these. I felt like they were a little difficult, so I'm just going to get rid of that one as well. And then next we have the Dream Big palette. So this one was kind of one of those ones that I didn't really think through too well when I first purchased it, but at the time I was just buying everything that Tarte came out with. I do like that it's a cute little mini travel palette, but it doesn't have a good transition shade in here for fair skin tones, and I feel like that is something that I really look for all the time now, because if it doesn't have that, I don't tend to reach for it all that much. You do have some just darker shades over here, and then you have a bunch of shimmer shades for the lid, and you have a matte ivory. But without that transition shade, I'm not the type of person that dips into multiple palettes when creating a look. I like a palette to just have everything that I need. So this one is something that I just really didn't reach for at all, even though the formula was okay. And then next we have the Styled by Harouche palette. Do you guys remember this? There was so much hype. Everybody was talking about this when it first came out. So this was more of like a face palette. You had 6 eyeshadows and then this peachy blush. I actually really liked this palette a lot. I used it quite a bit when it first came out, but then it just kind of got buried and I didn't use it anymore. I thought the formula was okay, but honestly, I don't really remember it too much. I don't think just looking at this that I would be likely to use it all that much because the 2 shimmer shades are very light, and I normally don't wear shimmer shades that are this light all over the lid. Usually, if anything, it's something that I might put like in the inner corner, but there are no other shimmery lid shades. Everything else is matte, so I don't know. I probably wouldn't use this all that much, plus it's pretty old at this point, so I'm probably going to declutter this one too. And then last but not least, we have the Tarteist Eye and Cheek palette. I want to say this was a Macy's exclusive, and it has a very similar layout to the Styled by Harouche, actually exactly the same, but this one has more of a dustier pink blush, and then the shadows in here are just very, very neutral. So I actually really like the look of this one, but it's really old again, and if I remember correctly, I don't think the formula was super fantastic in this one either. So I think I'm going to put this one in the declutter pile as well. Alright guys, moving right along, I have some palettes from The Balm, Mali Beauty, and also It Cosmetics. So let's start out with The Balm first. The Balm's eyeshadow palettes I feel like are very underrated. I don't hear a lot of people talking about them, but their shadow formula is really nice, particularly these Meat Matte palettes. I really enjoy these a lot. This is the original Meat Matte Nude. This is actually the second one that I've owned. I bought it during a 50% off sale because my original was very old and just a mess, and I felt like the formula wasn't as good as it used to be. So I wanted to buy a new one, and I love the cool tones in here. I think it's really beautiful. It's just a really pretty all matte palette. And then they also have Meat Matrimony, and this one has kind of a mix of warm and cool tones in it. Again, all matte shades. This one's really pretty too, but I think the first one was probably my favorite. Next we have the Balm Appetit eyeshadow palette, and this one, this one was actually not a favorite of mine. I may declutter this one. I remember saying in a video that I wasn't crazy about this formula, and I'm not sure why because I normally love the Balm's formula. There was just something different about this palette. I don't know what it was. I did really like the cool tones in it, and I'm kind of curious because I haven't used this in a few years now, if maybe I would like it more now because I'm a little bit more skilled at eyeshadow than I used to be. So it's possible that I can make this work. Actually, maybe I'll hold on to this and just test it out again because I'm looking at these colors and they're so pretty. Like I love this kind of slate grayish blue right here, and these dusty mauve shades are so pretty too. So I don't know, maybe I'll try it again and see what I think now. Next up is a palette that I made myself. On their website they have like a build your own palette kind of thing similar to ColourPop, so I just did some of their singles again during their 50% off sale. I highly recommend if you're going to buy anything from the Balm to just wait for that sale because it's so good and it's literally everything on the site, even these. So you know, it's just something I put together to try their eyeshadow singles. I kind of mixed warm and cool shades together. Next up I have the Nude Tude palette. This might have been the first one I ever got, and I love this one just because it's a very nice neutral palette. I think the formula is really good on it. The pan sizes are a little smaller than I would like, but you can still get a brush into them just fine. So there's that one. The next one is Nude Dude, and this one is the volume 2. And this one had like more rosier tones than the first one, which was a little bit more on the neutral side. But I really like this one as well. And then Nude Beach was the third one that they came out with, and this one was more warm tone. So that was again during that really warm tone craze where every single palette that was coming out was warm. So this one, again, love the formula. It's very similar to other ones that I have, but I'm just going to hang on to it anyway. They also came out with these, I think last year, and they're called What's the Tea? And actually I haven't used these as much as I wanted to, so I definitely need to keep these out and start using them. There's the hot tea and then the iced tea. So the hot tea one, I'll just show you quickly. This one has some really nice cooler tones in it, and both of these also have different eye primers. So first you have the natural one, which just kind of amps up the color that's actually in the pan, or the black one, which completely changes what the color looks like. So it's really kind of a unique concept, and I feel like you can get more colors out of this than what it actually looks like in the pan. And then the iced tea palette looks totally different. It doesn't have the teacups, they're just regular rectangles. And again, it still has the black primer and then the natural one. So I really like these and I think I want to use them more. So I'm going to set those aside. And then I also have the alternative rock palettes. These are face palettes. So there's volume 1 and 2. And volume 1 is again more cool toned, and you also have a bronzer, blush, and highlight in here, but you could probably use those on your eyes as well. And then volume 2 is more like neutral to warm toned. You have again a bronzer, a warmer tone blush, and then a warmer highlight, and also the shades are a little bit more warm. So these are really pretty as well. I haven't used them as much as I'd like to. Definitely gonna try to put those to use soon. And then next from IT Cosmetics, I have the Naturally Pretty palette. This is the original one. I never bought the second one, even though I've seen it in Ulta a few times and thought about picking it up. I think I got this one when it was on sale, like during 21 Days of Beauty, I want to say, like it was 50% off or something. I do really like the formula on it. It also has this Transforming Pearl shade, which is supposed to kind of turn any of these shades a little bit more into like a satiny finish. I don't really use it all that much, but it does have a lot of really pretty shades in here. It's just like very soft. And then this is the It Girl palette. I want to say this was a holiday release from either last year or the year before. This one has a blush in the middle and then eyeshadows on either side. To be honest with you, I really didn't use this all that much. The shades are just kind of nothing special. It's like a lot of other palettes that are in my collection. So I think I might go ahead and just declutter this one. I also have some palettes from Mali Beauty, which sadly is not available at Ulta anymore. It's not available at Kohl's. I think you can only get it now on her website and QVC, which is really kind of a shame because I think her eyeshadow formula was really good and again, very underrated. So this is the Let It Snow palette. This was from last holiday, I believe, and she had sent this to me in PR and I loved this palette. I loved the cooler shades in here, and I think the formula in these little palettes is amazing, especially the Muted Muse. This one was my favorite. And I got this one at Ulta, but I just loved the layout of it. You had some face products here that could also be used as eyeshadows, and they were larger pans. These are the shades that you would probably use the most, like a highlight and also like a transition shade. And then you had your warm colors, you had your cool colors. You could make a lot of different looks out of this really little palette. So I loved this one. I think I'm definitely going to hang on to it for now. The Muted Muse Velvet was another one that she came out with. This one I was not too crazy about just because it's all muted shades and I felt like there wasn't enough like color variety in here. A lot of the shades kind of look the same, especially on the eyes, so I'm probably going to go ahead and declutter this one. Also in that series was the Malibu palette, and this one was also really beautiful. It was more of a warm tone palette overall. Formula was fantastic, so I really like this one. I believe this one was limited edition though. And then we have Mali's mattes. So as you can see, I just bought every palette that looked like this from Mali because I just really like the formula a lot. And this one was nice. Again, it's just an all matte palette. It's not something I really reach for all that much. So I'll probably declutter this one too, just because it doesn't really get used, even though it's a nice palette. And then the last one from Mali is her Ageless Eyes palette. I really thought this one was so beautiful. I still do. I love like these kind of more dusty shades, especially on my skin tone. This one kind of reminds me of that Lorac California Dreaming one that I showed earlier. And these shades just look so pretty on fair skin. I don't believe you can get this palette anymore. For a while she had it on her website, but I don't think it's there anymore. I think I got mine on QVC though, if I'm not mistaken, but it's not there anymore either. So I'll probably still hold on to this even though it's discontinued because I just really love the colors in here. All right, so next we have Urban Decay, and I think this is the last brand that I'm going to do today just because right now we're about halfway through my high-end palettes, so the second half will be in the next video. So let's start out first with the Naked palettes, and of course the original Naked. This is not the original one that I bought because that one got used so much. I actually bought this one I think a year or two ago when it was 50% off, so it's not super old at this point, but I'm really sad that they discontinued this because this is my favorite of all the Naked palettes. It's just so beautiful. Some of these shades like Sidecar, so gorgeous. Smog, I love this shade. Toasted, one of my absolute favorites. So kind of like the Master Palette by Mario, I'm a little bit hesitant to use this just because I don't want to use it up, but I know that's kind of silly because it's not going to get used up anytime soon, and by that point it'll probably be really old anyway. Next I have the Naked 2 palette. This one was more of a cool tone palette, and I still really like this one, although I don't wear it as much as I probably should because I love cool tones, so I definitely have to remember to take this out a little bit more. I also have the Naked 3 palette. This is the original one that I bought, so it's getting pretty old at this point, and it's just really pretty rosy tone neutrals. This was another classic. I feel like everybody was talking about this one when it first came out. It just had so much hype surrounding it. Next up we have the Naked Cherry, and this one doesn't really get a lot of use because I don't really like wearing reds on my eyes that much. I don't mind oranges because I do think that they help make blue eyes pop, but reds, I don't know, I feel like they make me look kind of like I'm sick or something, so I really just bought this to review on YouTube, and I keep it around to do comparisons in case any dupes come out, but really don't use that one all that often. And then we have the Naked Honey. This was in my top palettes of 2019 video. This was like in my top 3. It's such a beautiful palette, even though it's neutrals. I feel like so many don't have this more like yellowy undertone. It's just a little bit more unique. I've really been enjoying this palette a lot. I also think just for my skin tone, it has a nice range of colors. It doesn't go too dark. So really love this one a bunch. Next up we have the Naked Petite Heat. They actually sent this to me when I was on their PR list, and I actually did have the original full-size one, but I didn't really use it all that much because there were so many warm tone palettes at the time, and I gave it away to somebody who I felt like could use it more than I could. So I don't have the original, but I do have this little one, and I actually like this little one better because it kind of took out some of those like really super dark warm tones and just left the ones that I would be more likely to use. So I think it's a really nice, cute little warm tone palette. Then we have the Beached Eyeshadow palette. This was a limited edition summer palette that came out right around the same time as that Tarte Be a Mermaid palette. Again, you just have these warm tones and then those pops of blue. A whole bunch of brands were doing this at the time. And I really like the formula of this palette, but I don't use it all that much, so I'm probably going to go ahead and declutter this one. Next, we also have the Back Talk palette. This one, I feel like not a lot of people liked it. I loved the colors in here. I love these rosy tones. I think they're so beautiful. And this one had eyeshadows and also blushes and highlighters, which was cool. Plus it had this mirror that came out in the middle, which was kind of a neat design concept. But I didn't feel like the formula was quite as good as their Naked palettes. So I kind of struggled when I used this one a little bit. So I'm probably going to go ahead and get rid of it. It's not available anymore anyway. All right, so next up, this one is really old. Oh my gosh, and I already know I'm going to keep this one just because of sentimental value. So this one is the Vice palette, and this one is so old. I don't even use it anymore, but when this first came out, there was so much hype, and I had just started my blog, and I remember going into Sephora and looking at this, and it was $50 or $60. I can't remember exactly. And I was, I was working in retail. I was broke, and my husband and I were dating, and I was looking at this, and he asked me about it, and I was telling him that like all of the big beauty bloggers were talking about this palette, but I was feeling kind of bad because I could only afford drugstore palettes for the most part. And he was like, well, if everybody else is reviewing it, you should too, So he bought it for me, which I thought was just so sweet. And we had only just started dating very recently, so I just was like blown away by that. So I don't know, I just like to keep this one around for, the sentimental value. Next up, we have the Gwen Stefani palette. I love this one so much. This is such a good palette, and it didn't get a lot of use, to be honest with you, because I knew it was limited edition. I knew I wanted to keep this one because I'm a big No Doubt fan. So, really, I don't pull this out as much as I should. I really should at this point because it's just going to go bad. It's just sitting there collecting dust. I might as well use it, right? I feel like I keep saying that in this video. But I love this palette, and I'm sad that it was discontinued. We also have the Born to Run palette. This again is another really good one from Urban Decay. I think there's just such a nice color variety in here. I think the formula is great. I do have some dupes of this one now, especially the C Color Cosmetics one is fantastic. So I kind of feel like what's the point of having the original, but I suppose it's still good to use in case any other dupes come out, that way I can compare them to the original palette. Yeah, I feel like you can just make so many different looks with this one, so it's a really good one. Next we have the Naked on the Run palette. So this one I think was like a full face palette. Yes, oh my gosh, this is so old. So it used to have a mascara in here. Oh no, this is the mascara. What was here? I don't know what was here. Maybe it was like the eye primer or something. I can't remember now, but there's an eyeliner, some eyeshadows, a bronzer, blush, and a highlight. This is so old. I don't think I would ever use this or put it on my eyes at this point, but look how chunky it is too. Yeah, I think I'm going to declutter this one. Then we have the Naked Ultimate Basics palette. This one I believe was all matte. Yes, so all matte palette, Naked formula. It's really, really good. I just don't use this very often, so I'm probably going to declutter it because I have a lot of all matte palettes at this point, and I really don't use them that much. So it doesn't make sense to keep that many. And some of the ones I talked about previously are ones that I think I would reach for over this one. So I think I'm going to declutter this as well. And then last but not least, we have the Mini On the Run palettes. I absolutely love these. I think they're fantastic. So I'm just going to quickly open them all and show them to you. This one is G-Train. This is one of the newer ones that just came out this fall. And then this one also came out this fall. This is Highway Queen, which is a little bit more kind of peachy, warm tones. I haven't used these much yet because I just got them recently. And then these are the original three. So we have Shortcut. This one's kind of like those dusty, mauvey berry shades again. This one's Bailout. It's neutrals with just like these two pops of purple right here. Really beautiful. I love the cooler tone neutrals. And then we have Detour. This one's a little bit more warm tone neutrals with the pops of blue. So anyway, guys, that does it for part 1 of my high-end eyeshadow palette. Stay tuned for part 2 coming soon. And if you're watching this long after the fact, I will put the playlist right up here in the corner so you can check out the rest of the videos in this series. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!